Hello, afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Detox Film and Discussion, a Elite Productions presentation and event. We're so glad that so many of you came out to join us today, and we'll just go right into it. So today we're supposed to view Criminal Love first. However, due to some unforeseen circumstances, we're going to have to push its viewing until after the panel discussion, and it will be launching roughly around 5 o'clock. All right, so because of this, we're just going to jump right into today's panel discussion. And are you hearing me? I believe I was shipping in and out. Okay. And
Yes,
today's panelists are Giovanni Lewin, Patrick Watson, L'Oreal Leng, Asian Reed, who unfortunately cannot make it today, and Kareem Medley. In addition, we have some guest panelists, Joni Beko, who I also believe is not presently with us, and Miss Margot O'Sullivan from the Women's Center. Okay, welcome speakers. Thank you for taking your time out to be with us. And we're just going to start with our first question, which I'll throw to L'Oreal Lang. L'Oreal, can you please tell us what a relationship is to you and what a healthy relationship looks like?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. What a relationship is to me. So, a relationship, in my definition, is just a agreement between two or more persons. However, I do believe that there are many different types of relationship, as you said before, but I consider a healthy relationship to be one where there is communication, there is trust, there is guidance, and both parties are benefiting positively from the relationship.
Okay, Lori, you said guidance. Where would you suggest this guidance comes from?
Okay.
Would that be from experience or third parties?
It can be both. And necessarily when I say guidance, I mean in a relationship, your partner, your friend, whoever the other person is supposed to be helping to build you. If we're going to look at it as a positive, a healthy relationship, they're not supposed to be bringing you down. So guidance in terms of mentorship, they are supposed to be helping you building on the fundamentals that you already know. They are supposed to be willing to give you advice, willing to be there for you. That is what I consider as guidance.
Okay, is there any of our speakers that would like to add to that point? Okay, Giovanni? Yes.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me properly? Am I being heard?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Yes, you are.
All right, great. So wonderful definition from Miss Ling. Um, not going to subtract anything from it. I'm probably going to give more of like a foundation as to how I will continue to speak about this matter, continuing into the discussion. I always tell people that I use 4 tenets to govern how I behave as a human being. And those 4 things are your mentality, your physicality, your spirituality, and your emotionality, right? And I'll approach the relationship discussion in the same way. You cannot be in a relationship without first being physically in tune with the person. You cannot be in a relationship without being emotionally in tune with another person, or spiritually or mentally, right? And that's as plain and simple as I can get. Once you are okay physically with the person, then the relationship has a foundation. Once you're okay with the person spiritually, mentally, emotionally, then there's a foundation for the relationship, and that is how a relationship is stable and will remain stable.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Miss O'Sullivan, you seem to
Yes.
be agreeing with some of what Giovanni said. Would you like to just add quickly to whatever Lori and he had said?
Yes, definitely. In terms of what a relationship means, it must be a connection. And that connection can be one that is intimate. There must be communication, yes. And commitment, intimacy, communication. And in some cases, depending on the kind of relationship, there must be passion. There must be a drive to wanting to be around those persons and in that family or in that couple, intimate relationship. There must be also respect. So a lot of times we just look on relationships and we talk about the love factor, but there must be compassion, there must be respect, some mutual respect. And I'm going to kind of rub some corns maybe and talk about submission too. The person who spoke about in terms of guidance. And I hasten to say submission, and submission not in the sense that I know for us who are Christians, we talk about, the husband is the head and all of that, but not from that sense, but submission from the part of responsibility, because it is a responsibility. So for example, a wider relationship, thinking of a family, there must be some form of submission in terms of who is responsible for the children. And even in a couple relationship, are we submissive to each other? Are we taking responsibility to ensure that the needs of these persons, the spouse, is met, the partner is met? So I'm also in agreement with the person who, what I call the dimensions of the self, looking at the physical, the social, the spiritual, the psychological in terms of thoughts and behavior. Who is it that is going to help this person to realize that they are more than? For example, if it is that they were in some kind of relationship before that they felt like, they were just being used, that person should be able to, uplift and build, so the self-esteem is built, the confidence is built, and so on. So I also, I'm definitely in agreement with looking at it from the factor of the dimensions of the self, and also not forgetting the ideal. Where is it that I want to be? Where is it that, what is my purpose? And is that person able to help me to fulfill that? So in a sense, that's what I would characterize a healthy relationship to be.
Okay, thank you. Now that we've looked at what a healthy relationship is, I'll just like to ask the panel, do you believe that an unhealthy relationship is also an abusive relationship? Um, I would like, Lori or Patrick would be able to give their opinion first.
Sure. Do I consider unhealthy relationship to be an abusive relationship? Yes, I do, because there are many different forms of abuse. You have emotional abuse, you have verbal abuse, you have physical abuse, sexual abuse, whatever. In most cases, when persons hear the word abuse, the first thing that comes to their mind is either sexual abuse or physical abuse. And not discrediting it or ever, but there is also the mental trauma. When you are in an unhealthy relationship, you are dealing with a lot of negativity, and it is hard to cope from it, and it damages your self-esteem, it damages who you are as a person. And I've always said to other persons, because I do, however, offer counseling to some persons, that when you are dealing with a relationship where you are the person that is being damaged, you need to leave. You need to say to yourself that I am going to need time to cope from this. You cannot leave one unhealthy relationship to jump back into another relationship, because then you are going to be the unhealthy person in that new relationship. So, do I consider it to be an abusive relationship? Yes, I do, because there are many different forms of abuse.
To to add, I'm actually of a different view. I don't believe just because the relationship is unhealthy, it is abusive. While I agree that there are many different forms of abuse, we must then take into consideration the definition of the word abuse. Now, abuse in and of itself has two general meanings. It is either to misuse something, or it means to treat something with cruelty or violence or negative effect on a repeated basis. Now, just because a relationship is unhealthy, that doesn't necessarily mean it is abusive, because abuse indicates intent, and an intent to cause harm and an intent to cause damage. There are some relationships that are unhealthy, but it was not the intent of the person for it to cause harm or for it to cause abuse. So a relationship can be, for example, draining, and it is draining for you in an emotional or mental reason, simply because you have to be constantly helping someone and you're helping them to your detriment. That doesn't mean the person is abusing you necessarily. However, that is unhealthy because you now are feeling the brunt and the effect that is negative upon you. But it is not the intent of the person to harm you or to cause you pain or to cause you anything like that. Sometimes these things are inadvertent. However, we have to tread carefully whenever we're talking about unhealthy relationships, because the dynamic of an unhealthy relationship is usually causative. And because it is causative, when I say that, I mean it goes from either one person to the next, or there is some cause and effect to it. So this happens, so that happens, and then it becomes unhealthy. I say that to mean, for example, the same example of something being draining towards you. Let us say you're in a relationship with somebody and this person has low self-esteem. You know are trying to cuddle, or not really trying to cuddle, but trying to empower and uplift this person, but their negative purview of themselves is affecting you. That is unhealthy, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is abusive. So that is my purview, that's my point on that.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Karim, you have your hand raised. Would you like to add something?
Hi, good afternoon. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
All right, so I just want to jump back to the first question that you asked, because I feel like what I'm about to say is in relation to both questions. What I wanted to add to the first question that I didn't necessarily hear anybody say is that a relationship is first a friendship, and a relationship involves compromise. No, as it relates to an unhealthy relationship being abusive, or it as long as it's unhealthy, it's abusive. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, as Patrick said, because sometimes I think it was Margot who spoke to the psychological nature sometimes that plays into the relationship. Because I feel like sometimes persons are psychologically damaged or emotionally damaged. And so it's not an intent that they have to harm you, but because of their own trauma that they're dealing with, it comes off that way. As Patrick said, you get the brunt end of it. So it's not an intention that they have to harm you, whereas it's abusive. But because firstly, you guys are friends, and there is compromise being made you know can say, okay, I'll stick it out in the relationship because this isn't abusive. However, it is unhealthy. You as a friend will come in to say, hey, if it's your boyfriend, if it's your girlfriend, honey, you need to go get help. We need to sort this out. Some form of proactiveness and continuance has to be going on. Like help, you have to be getting help. And I think that it was the first person who spoke that said spoke to guidance as well. And I feel like this is where guidance would come in because not just because it's unhealthy means that it's abusive because abuse is a very specific and I think that and I agree with Patrick when he said we have to be careful with how we use the word abuse because in and of itself it's a very touchy subject, especially to say that a relationship is unhealthy, thus it's abusive. That's a very strong thing to say about a relationship. So there are unhealthy characteristics and traits that can be in a relationship without it being abusive. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. We just moved to Giovanni and then Miss O'Sullivan on the same question before we move along. Giovanni?
All right, yeah. I agree with the other panelists when they say that it's not necessarily abusive with Patrick and Karim, where it's not necessarily abusive if it's unhealthy. It's not inherent to each other. The thing I want to probably touch down on is something that Karim said, that so that we're not lost in the fray when it comes on to understanding what he was trying to say. So he brought up the point that persons might have residual issues and feelings from previous circumstances that make them interacting with people that kind of harder, and so it would affect their relationships and so on and so forth. And the way Karim spoke, it seemed as though he's saying that because persons are hurt doesn't mean that they're intentionally hurting others, which is true. But at the same time, they are hurting others, and regardless of whether it's deliberate or not, abuse is taking place, right? In most cases, abuse is still taking place. So when we look at that, we want to say we're going to take away what is abuse and what is circumstantial, right? So even though you have somebody who has low self-esteem, and because of this, you're pumping into them, you're pumping into them, and that becomes draining to you. That's not necessarily the abuse. The abuse begins when the person is calling on you, when the person is dependent on you to give you that sort of empowerment that is draining you, knowingly doing so and draining you. That is when the abuse begins. So I want that sort of ley line to be established so that we don't get confused when we talk about abuse and unhealthiness.
I know that Miss Sullivan is about to speak, but just before we move from, I just there's something that Gio said when he said that not because the person is hurt and they're hurting you, not because the intention is not intentional that they're hurting you, but they're hurting you because they're hurt. So that and he's saying that that's abuse, but I'm saying how on what basis do we now say that that's abuse? Let's put it in context. If I'm walking down the road and I see Miss Sullivan, me, I a bouncer. And our shoulder probably not good and my lick up on her sick shoulder. It hurts. But that's not abuse. It wasn't intention. I didn't intentionally say, yo, Sarah come and say, yo, me got lick up on her shoulder. Worse becoming no her shoulder but than me got lick. No, that would have been abuse and that's intentional. Whereas because I didn't know better, the state and place that I'm in, I didn't know better. And so I can only do what I know. And so if I don't know better, I can't do better. And that's why I was saying that, it becomes unhealthy if the person doesn't seek to get help to correct the state of mind that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Karim,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Miss Sullivan. I'm terribly sorry. I think you misunderstood what Gio was saying. Gio was saying that the abuse doesn't start when you unintentionally hurt the person. The abuse starts when you become dependent on that person, knowing that it is having a negative effect on them.
Um, since everybody's gonna apologize to Miss O'Sullivan, I thought I would chip in and do the same. Here's where I disagree. Um, as we started out by saying, relationships are built on consent and understanding. So whether or not you Gio brought across the point that it becomes abusive when I I am now calling on somebody knowing that me calling on them is basically going to be negative to them. But in and of itself, that is still intent. You are still knowingly knowing that something you're doing is harmful, and then you're continuing it just the same. That is still the intent to harm. Now, regardless of however we want to put that, the simple fact that because you know better now, and I think this is what Karim was saying, because you know better and you still don't do better, that is abusive. But if you honestly, in all shape and form, because if we're going to take this to, for argument's sake, and this is probably an exaggeration, but if you're going to take it to a court case level, and I'm going to say, all right, this person is abusing me, the lawyer, I said doctor, the lawyer is going to first and foremost ask you, what is your proof that this person intentionally did something? That is a basis of abuse. It has to be an intent to do something, and it has to be done intentionally. So while we are defining, as Gio said, which is important, because you have to have that distinction when you're talking about unhealthy and abuse, because abuse is a very serious topic. Abuse, the basis of abuse comes with intention. It is your intent to do something negative. That is where abuse starts. And before nobody else cut Mr. Sullivan, start talk before they cut you again.
You're mute.
Yes, I was saying Margot is okay. Calling me Margot is fine. One of the things I want to look on is that we have defined what is a healthy relationship. I know we're talking about is an healthy relationship toxic. One of the things I will look on is it serving you? Is this relationship really serving you? Is it meeting your needs? Are you not abusing, but are you dependent on someone knowing that you really don't want them? So it becomes toxic when it does not necessarily mean that it's abusive, but when you are using somebody, when you are not respecting, when there's no compassion, when there is no love in the relationship, when there's no commitment, you just think because, oh, I like how I look with this person. I like what I can get out of being with this person, and not necessarily, okay, I also want to contribute to this relationship. So if the dependence is just on one person, there's nothing that you're able to give, it is also toxic. Because sometimes when we talk about abusive and unhealthy, we think about the other party. What about us? Are we the person who is, contributing to what is happening? So it does not necessarily show abuse, but one of the things I want to touch on, how it can become abusive and, it creeps in without us knowing, is what we call passive aggression. So, the belittling and the put down, or, the so-called compliment, which is so much sarcastic. Oh my God, you look so good in that. When you really know that the person feel bad about what they're wearing. Oh, you can just eat anything and be funny when you know that the person is struggling with the weight. So it can become that. So it can be unhealthy if it is that one, it's not serving you, as I said. And if all the things that we listed to be so-called healthy, if those are not present, then It's unhealthy, but it is not necessarily abusive. Oh, one more thing in terms of abusive, I want to touch on in the financial abuse. I don't remember if it's L'Oreal who spoke about the different types of abuse, but we need to remember financial too. So it's not only the psychological, they might never put their hand on you, but the things that they would say, yo, I tell you a story, if that girl had left me, man, yeah, then what? And you're afraid to find out what next, or you don't understand what they're really saying until it's too late. So they don't necessarily need to, or they might even see another relationship and say, you see how John do that girl, remember me telling the girl do me that, you see, that kind of thing. So it psychologically can be financially dependent on that person, and they will never buy you the things that you need. They will not let you spend the money and go to the supermarket. They're going to bring it in because it should not touch your hands, really. So there are different types of abuse other than the sexual and the ones that we can actually see. But as we talk about unhealthy relationship, going back to that where we started, it does not necessarily mean that it's abusive.
Okay, thank you, Margo. And you actually started to answer one of our next questions, and since we're basically along those lines, we'll just continue. And that would be, what questions can you ask yourself to identify, or if you identify that you're in an unhealthy relationship?
Okay, you want me to start?
Yes, you can go ahead.
All
They
right,
were
so
cutting you. Your time to shine.
I tell you. All right, so one of the questions I asked before is this really serving me? Are my needs being met? Do I feel respected? Am I able to give back that same respect? So it's not, respect is not one way. Do I want to really stay in this relationship? There is, when we talk about love and relationships, we usually use the Sternberg triangle, looking at commitment and intimacy and passion. Are those things really there? So it can be an empty love. You just there living together, maybe not even living together. But as I said before, you like how you look together. The relationship itself serves you, because you're so and so girlfriend or wife or whoever. But there's nothing else. It's just an empty shell. So is this really serving me and my needs being met? Where do I see myself with this person in a number of years, in a number of months? Am I able to be my best self in this kind of relationship? So if I can't see that, then, as you said, it's unhealthy, and that person really needs to take a rain check and get out.
Okay, thank you. Lori, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, just to add to what Miss Margo is saying, um, personally, the first question I would ask is, am I happy? And if I'm not happy, I will then ask the question, why am I not happy? And once we've found that problem, I will then proceed to ask, is this something that can be worked on? Or is this a sign that I need to leave? I will then ask, what am I doing to contribute to what the person is feeling? You would sit them down and ask them the same question. Are you happy? Am I doing something that makes you unhappy? If I'm doing something that makes you unhappy, can you tell me what it is? And we can decide whether it is something that can be fixed or this is a clear sign that this is not working out. Those are just some of the basic questions I think people should ask themselves. Just, are you happy?
Okay, great. Um, So I'd like to throw this next question to Patrick, and that's what are the signs of an unhealthy relationship?
All right. That's a great question. Before I get into the answering of that, I just want to touch on something that was said previously. In that when we're checking on the if some questions that we could ask based to check if you're in an unhealthy relationship. One of the questions is, "Are you happy?" And ironically, I have two quotes I want to give you. One of them was from a psychology teacher that I have, a professor that I have currently. If you ever heard me call him a teacher, he'd fight me. But it's a psychology professor that I have, and he says, I quote, "Human beings live in a perpetual state of unhappiness." Simply put, everything that we do is an attempt to become happy or to find happiness. So if you're constantly trying to find happiness, that means you're essentially always in a state of unhappiness and you're trying to get out of it. So that is something I started thinking about recently, because if we're always in a state of unhappiness and we're trying to get happy, is it then that happiness is what determines if we are in an unhealthy relationship or not? Because you're already unhappy naturally existing. So then is it the job of the relationship, or is it the function of a relationship to make you happy? Is that what we're seeking out in a relationship? But I figure we'll get into that a little later down. But the other quote, and this is how I will answer your question now, in terms of the red flags, is one by Marshall Montana, and he says, and I quote, "Happiness is a measure of success." So for me, I judge happiness, or I judge a person's happiness by the success they feel in their life. So, and I always use this example: if a garbage collector feels genuine joy and pride taking up the garbage and cleaning up, you can't tell him that he's not successful, because he feels genuine joy and accomplishment from what he's doing. And I think that is something that we need to get into the habit of understanding. Happiness is fleeting. Joy is what we should be striving for. Joy is what we should be striving for, right? So when you're now looking at some of these red flags, right, when you're looking for some of these red flags, and it goes back to some of the questions you're asking yourself: what is this person doing that is negatively affecting my success? And success now, I go back to what Gio said in the four tenets of a person: is your physical success, your emotional success, your mental, whatever, financial, spiritually. What are your goals in life, right? Do you, and when I say goals, I don't mean aspirations, because aspirations is like, I want to be rich. Everybody wants to be rich, but nobody ever tells you what richness is to them or what wealth is to them. So for me, financially, for example, I say, by the end of the year, I want to save $1 million. A red flag to me now is if this person now I'm in a relationship with is not helping me save. They're contributing to my expenses, and I am now having to live hand to mouth. That's a red flag, because it is deterring your progress. Red flags are any indicators or any symbols in your relationship that prove, or I don't want to use by the same word, but indicate that you are going off track. You are going the wrong direction. It's like a stop sign. It's like, hey, that's the direction you should be going, but you're going this way. So, for instance, on a red flag, and since we're on the topic, abuse is a huge red flag. I don't think anybody should tolerate abuse in any form, whether it is physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Abuse is a huge red flag. And it can come in subtle forms, as Miss Sullivan said. I'm sorry, it'll take me a second to get used to Margot, but it can be even in the passive aggression, because in little things that you say, even in just how you look at somebody, sometimes when they say some things, you, you're taught in psychology that their communication, it is impossible to not communicate. So even when you're trying not to communicate, that is communicating somebody. You're saying to somebody that I don't want to communicate, and that is still giving a message. What you do and how you do it sends messages to persons. And we have to be aware of the messages that we are giving off and at the messages that we're receiving. Sometimes our red flags are clear and evident. Sometimes people say, boy, you know, say, I gotta left you and find a new man. And you take it as a little joke. But think about it. Why are they saying that? Why would you joke about something like that? So serious, right? It, what is the underlying cause? And I'm not saying sometimes things aren't a joke, but they'll also teach you that everything is done with a purpose, right? Everything in life has a purpose. So you have to sometimes when you're in a relationship assess certain things and say, I wonder why that happened, or I wonder what that means. And if you're constantly finding yourself bringing up the same point, I wonder why I'm telling myself I'm gonna look good in that. I wonder why I'm telling myself me I look lopsided from the other day. I wonder why she tell myself my ear need for trim so often. Think about it. There are messages that people send you in their everyday life that communicate things to you. And as I said, some of those things you have to look out for because they're red flags. And as I said, just to give back the definition, a red flag, in my opinion, is anything that negatively affects your success.
Okay, thank you. Um,
Before Gia goes, no Gia go get episode.
yeah.
I just want to jump on what Patrick was saying and just say sometimes our red flags are very, very self-centered.
Mm.
They have nothing. It's not necessarily that the person is a bad person, that they're negative, that we need to left. But a lot of times our red flags are self-centered. Is it? And it goes back to what Patrick was saying, we have goals, we have things that we want to get to, but because that person is not necessarily helping us get to where we want to be, we're like, we can't do it done. But did we take the time to sit down and say, hey, these are my goals. How can you help me achieve these? How can we? Because when you get into a relationship, it's no longer an I thing, it's a we thing.
It's a unit.
You're a team now. Yeah, you're not by yourself anymore. It's a team thing. So it's how can we work together to achieve our individual goals? Because we are now a team. And a lot of times there are these red flags that we claim while we break up with people and call people toxic. They don't make no sense. It's self-centered things like, oh, me not like the fact that she not cut her toenail every 2 weeks. She cut it every 2.5. Okay? And some of them, they're very trivial, they're trivialities and they're things. And as I said, relationships, a big part of relationships is compromise also. So some of these things we can work on, we can work together with. But that's just all I wanted to say. Sometimes our red flag, we have to be careful how we flag things as red flags because sometimes they're very self-centered and selfish.
All right, Gio, I think we're ready for you now. I'm not sure. Are you hearing me, everyone?
Yes, I'm here. Can you
Okay.
guys hear me?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we're hearing
All
you.
right, cool. All right, let me jump on something that Kareem said because it's been a while since I've heard somebody use the inclusion of both parties, both or more parties, because we do know that there are polyamorous relationships in life. But relationship isn't spelled with one I, it's spelled with two. And when you have two I's, that becomes we, right? So two I's becomes we. Remember that. So
Hold on.
here,
Can I just get that quote one more time, preacher? Can I get that quote one more time?
relationship is spelled with two I's, not one. So two I's become we. You good? You get that? You get it?
Yeah, man. I can write it down for a little later. Don't worry, I'm gonna write it down.
Look. All right. But yeah, I want to touch down on some more concrete like indicators of the red flags. I know that they Patrick and Kareem went through a lot and delved very, very deep into that, and it's very good. But like things like distrust, non-communication, Patrick could have touched down on that. Codependency. And this is a very touchy one because people want to know what codependency is and what dictates what codependency is supposed to be. Patrick is much more aligned to tell us what codependency is. But from what I understand, what codependency is that persons are depending on their partner to give them certain things, certain wants, certain needs, and they've completely done away with their individuality. They've completely done away with what they can do for themselves and become sort of parasitic to the person, right? So there's no longer a me without a we. And that cannot be so, because again, there are two I's. And if you lose your dot, you're no longer an I, you're either a stroke or an L. And we don't take L's. So that's it for codependency. But when we look at distrust now, we have to look at the foundation of the relationships as we had stated previously: consent, trust, commitment, right? Consent, trust, commitment. If you've lost the trust, you've lost one of the three legs that your relationship stands on, right? Again, if you are no longer committing to your relationship, either partner is not committing to the relationship, there's no passion, as Margot would have said previously. There is no a deficit for one of the tenets of love, right? And a lot of people look at love differently. I see love as an energy. A lot of people see it as something in the numinous, but that's another conversation, right? And then there's the consent. I mean, that is a huge red flag. It borders into abuse that Patrick was speaking about earlier. Without consent, nothing is supposed to be happening. Once there is no consensual agreement from both or more parties involved in an intimate, sexual, whatever relationship you want to call it, nothing supposed to go on. That is abusing consent, and therefore you will step into another facet of abuse, either physically, sexually, emotionally, Margot would have said financially, right? So these are a lot of red flags that we can use as indicators going further into our relationships.
All right. Lori,
My
then.
turn?
Oh, Miss Margot, yes, go ahead.
I keep on laughing at the Miss Margot, but that's fine. One of the things I'm agreeing with just everything. If you notice, I'm just yes. And one of the things I wrote down before when the question was asked is looking at purpose. And I was so glad that I think it was Patrick who spoke to it. Looking at success. Am I at peace? Is there joy? And one of the things that I usually caution persons about is, you're seeking happiness, as Patrick would have said before. Because for me personally, and not just personally, but for many persons, happiness is what is happening now. So I got something new, I feel good about it. I'm over the moon about it. However, is there joy? So even when all hell broke loose, we can still have joy and have that peace deep within ourselves to know that, you know what? Tomorrow is coming. It might be a better day. So how is it that I am going to live now in the present with all that is happening, but I'm also going to hope for something better? So when we look on joy, when we look on peace, when we look on success and purpose being fulfilled, and one of the things we're talking about, red flag, is there work going on in the relationship? Every single relationship takes work. Is it stagnant? Is it that I do not want to work on this? So there's a lack of commitment. It doesn't mean that the relationship is over. But do I need to really assess to see, is this person the person that I want to be with? There's no intimacy. Why is it that I don't feel connected to this person? Is it me? Because sometimes we talk about, you spoke earlier about the questions that we need to ask ourselves. Is it really me? Because sometimes it is. Am I the one who is not working? Am I the one who is just being stagnant? One of the things that we also need to remember is that relationships cannot be just unrequited. It is a two-way thing. I cannot be trying to work on this thing and then you are not doing it. I feel this way about you, but then you don't feel that same way about me. So I have to remember that. So refusal to grow is a red flag. I'm sorry, but me being an individual, having a spouse, I'm going to be something different. No, we are a unit. So as much as, the little conflicts and so on that will arise, it means that we need to work on growing as a couple, growing as a family, growing as, teammates or whatever kind of relationship it is. But it takes growth. And if there's no growth, if there's no changes, for me, that's a big red flag.
Okay, yes, Lori, it's your turn.
Yeah, I'm going to add to what everybody was saying. I actually wrote them down. I have my pencil and my book and everything, writing down. So when Kareem was talking about your goals and your partner's goals, I think that it's a red flag if you and your partner do not sit down and talk about goals you guys want to achieve together. I think that's a huge red flag because I don't think you guys are going to grow together or individually if you guys don't know exactly what you want. Right? And then Gia said something about abuse, about if there's no consent, there is no abuse. I just want to touch on that a little bit. If your partner doesn't give consent and then you proceed to try and convince them, it is not consent. Because then they are feeling like they're obligated to go with what you want. You are not giving them the free thought of saying, okay, I don't want to do this, so I don't have to do this. You're now telling them that I don't want to do this, but my partner wants to do this, so now I have to do this. Get what I'm saying? So if your partner does not give consent, it's abuse. Because abuse with you pursuing them is still abuse. Get what I'm saying? And there was one that Miss Margaret said a while ago that I completely forgot. It was something about the red flag. Oh my. When I remember, I'll get back to it so you can move along.
Okay, so we have Patrick, and we'll take his words on the topic before we move on.
Right. Another thing I should have added from the jump, but because a lot of persons touched on it, I didn't. Um, in how we define a relationship, personally for me, I view relationships like a partnership. This is what I have. This is what you have. This is not what we have. And because we have this, how are we now going to move forward? I'm very big on that quote from the Bible that says, "The two shall become one and one body, one flesh," and that don't just mean say one can and have a nice time. It quite literally means two individuals now merge their lives and they move forward in unison. And I think that is what a lot of people don't really understand about a relationship. Some people might not be at that point mentally and mature enough to be in that type of relationship. But that is the real purpose of a relationship. And relationship, and why I call it a partnership, a relationship to me is any social interaction between you and another person. What makes relationships different is the level of intimacy or the purpose of the interaction. So me and my friend them have a relationship. We're friends. That's a friendship. You get me? I will now have a girlfriend and we have a different relationship, you see me? When my girlfriend becomes spouse, we have a new level of relationship and it keeps changing because of the purpose of the relationship and the intimacy of such. Now, Gio touched on some points are the legs that relationships stand on. He said there were consent, trust, and I think it was communication. Um, I like four-legged tables, so I'm gonna add one more.
Patrick, commit.
Yes, commitment. Thank you, commitment. Right, commitment. Right. So then you see my table. I got all of five leg now instead of four, because for me, in any relationship, you must have communication. And then the other thing that you should have in a relationship is understanding, because it takes some level of maturity and understanding between two persons for you to be able to have this relationship. And Laura probably gonna hate me for disagree with her so much for the one little meeting. But the point where she say
Me
in
from
terms of
side.
the point where she comes with in terms of you convince your partner and it abusive. You know, 100% agree. Here's why I don't 100% agree. Here's why. Because we might hear that statement and we think of it one way. And if we're thinking about it in one particular way, maybe, and I understand. But if you present an option to your partner, right? And they say no initially, they might have said no initially because they don't understand why you're presenting the option. They don't understand why the option is given to you, anything like that. If you then explain, and then you can, for I like to call it the pros and the cons, you can put out some pros and cons and say, this is why it would be good, this is why it probably won't be good for you, or whatever the case might be. And then your partner is able to, with some knowledge, weigh the pros and cons. If they're able to do that and still say no, and then you push it, to me, that is where the abuse comes in. Because, for example, and this is probably not a great example, but when I'm going to go take my significant other out to go eat food, right? Them always say women don't know what them want. Them always say that. I even had to go on TV one day and I had a whole discussion about it. But let us say now, for example, she says she wants pasta. Yeah, she wants pasta, for argument's sake. Suppose I suggest to her now, I said, darling, say, when I think pasta is the best idea, I could try sushi, for argument's sake. And I can present my argument and say, all right, this is why I think sushi is better than the pasta. Maybe we'll have pasta 3 times for the week. Maybe we'll have to switch it up now or something of that nature. So we'll switch it and we'll say, all right. And I convince her that, oh, yeah, maybe sushi is good. And she liked the sushi. I don't think that is abuse. You get what I'm saying? I say, maybe it's a bad example. Maybe it's a little bit of a bad example, but that is where I I get that maybe it's not always abusive thing from. You get me? So that was just my 2 cents on that matter. And Laurie, it's not that I'm trying to fight you or argue against you. Like, you make some great points, You make some great points. I swear to you. It's just one and few things more like tweak. I'm sorry. I apologize profusely.
You've been a
Right.
fight.
May I? May I? One of the things I just wrote down so I don't forget is that we have to be careful with the word abuse. And I agree with Patrick, and also as to where Laurie is coming from. But there are just some things I think we have to be careful with. For example, even married couples talking about divorce, everything, divorce. And abuse is one of those that can be really that can become really toxic to a relationship if every time something happens, we think of it that way. Oh, this is what is happening. And sometimes what we realize in the counseling profession is that for some things, persons will always be using words that are in their subconscious. Maybe this person have experienced abuse their whole life. And so even though it's not present in their relationship, or if it is that, we learn about psychological abuse, So if it is that you're not giving me what I want, then maybe that is it, kind of thing. So we have to be careful not to use the word out of place, because for some persons that can be somewhat of a trigger. And then for some of us, if persons are keep thinking that we're abusing them, then we're thinking that this relationship is maybe not going to be serving me. And so I might need to get out, or this person needs to get help. one of the things too that I was thinking about is roles. What are the roles in the relationship? How does each person play a part in who I want to become? Or what role do I play in others' life? So it's spouse, friendship, staff, it doesn't matter what role do I play. Am I playing my role? And even during the COVID, I was saying to persons, in order to cope, have different roles, give your friends different roles. So the one who is always joking and, always a Billa vibe, when that person comes on the phone and they're talking about COVID, say, we are going to Billa vibes right here. So when the other person comes who has, all of that information and can give you the correct information and you can have a good discussion, then that role they want to play. But not everybody is going to play the same role in the relationships that you have. And you have to ensure that you know what role you are playing, or else it is that you're going to be exhausted at times. If it is, for example, you're the person that everything happened is you them call. Who do you call? What do you do with all of that when it is poured onto you? Are you the person in the relationship who is always doing the finances? What if one month and you are sick and you are not able to go through the books and see what is happening and deal with the financial aspect of the relationship? Is the other person able to do it? So even the roles and responsibilities, I think that also need to be discussed. And we talk about communication in relationship. I think it is fundamental because a lot of times we might even get into the relationship and we have never talked about certain things. What do we want from this? Where is this going? And that is one of the questions sometimes that I was told men are afraid of when women start to ask, when you're getting close, where is this going? And if the other person is not ready to, move into a so-called intimate relationship, but it goes back, as I said, to communication and knowing the roles that we play in other person's lives.
Okay, Giovanni, you may go ahead and speak.
I wanted to add on to what because Marco made some really salient points, and I wanted to add to them, but at the same, I want to write them down because I know for a fact that we're going to come around to talking about them, and it's you can continue. I just know that I'm going to bring it up.
Okay, so we did cover the red flags. Just a quick question. Do you guys believe that someone can change if you see their red flags? Do you think their red flags would change or the person would change overall?
I think I'm going to answer this first. I do believe that the person can change if they want to change. If they are in the relationship and they feel that, hey, this is a relationship that I really want to keep, and this person has said to me that these are some of my red flags, if I really want to keep it, I am going to internalize these red flags, look at what is happening and see how I can change it, because this is something I really want to keep. And I know that if the person doesn't see a change, they are going to leave. So if a person sees their red flags and they want to change, they will change. However, if a person doesn't want to change and you tell them their red flags, they will not change.
On that red flag thing that Laurie was talking about, and as it relates to people changing, I would also say yes. I think that persons can change if they want, but at the same time, not necessarily your red flags might not be their red flags. So it's a matter of just you guys sitting down, discussing the issue. And as Laurie said, for real, internalizing, finding out these red flags are actually red flags. Is it something that we can work on? Because sometimes when people see red flags, it's actually a part of somebody's personality. So is it something that can be changed? Do we, and how are we going to actually work on changing this? How are we going to work towards a betterment? Because at the end of the day, I strongly believe that it's a two-man thing. It's a group. It's a two-man effort. So in order for the person to change, it's going to take support, help, all of that stuff. So yeah, I do believe that somebody can change their red flags if it's actually a red flag. Yeah.
And I get the chance to publicly agree with Lori so that she can't fight me out because I think she hit the nail on the head. If you that and I've said it before and to many persons that there are two things that are constant in life, and there are two things that are inevitable in life: death and change. The two things that are inevitable in life, they must happen. And if you really and truly value that person, value your relationship with them, if they bring a point, an issue, and I even want to add to what Karen was saying, sometimes even if you don't view it as an issue, the level of respect and the level of admiration you have for that person, if they say to you, listen, the way you sleep at night time bother me, fix it. You're gonna think about changing it without even arguing sometimes. You might want to question it and say, why it bother you or why whatever. But the very nature of the relationship and the intimacy and value that you place on that person in your life, you know that whatever they say to you, it's gonna be for your benefit. They're not trying to pull you down, they're not trying to do anything negative. They're just trying to build you up and build your relationship. So sometimes, even if you don't see it as a red flag, just because they were the one that pointed it out to you, you gotta look and sit down and think about it and say, is this really something that is negative? And then you will start to, as Laura says, internalize it, make that change on your own. Because really and truly, for change to happen, you have to want to change. And that is one of the most important things. If you're gonna change, the change has to start with your mindset. You have to first change how you think about an issue or a problem. And once you've begun to do that, then change is inevitable, as I said.
May I go ahead now?
Yes, you can.
All right. I agree so much with what everybody's saying because and it goes back to for me to communication. What's a deal breaker in this relationship? And for me, too many times we get into something with only how a relationship starts really. If it is that it starts with just the passion, if it just starts with, the whole sexual stuff, if we're talking about an intimate relationship, and there's no communication as to, what the deal breakers are. If you do this, what is it that would cause us to break up? What would cause me to want to walk out of this relationship? What is the most annoying thing I can do to you? Asking those questions. And it doesn't have to be like, an interview. Sometimes when we think of asking the questions and, communicating what our deal breakers are, we think of it as it's an interview. No, it's a conversation. And it can come up with you watching a movie. You see some things and you're like, that is something I really do not like. And even without the person saying it, sometimes we can recognize that that's a deal breaker. That's a red flag. That's something that, no, we don't want. And so again, communication is important in how we deal with relationships. So yeah, what the deal breaker is, name them out, claim, have them out there in the open. Even if it is that you start the relationship, be so strong in yourself, your values, the foundations that you have, that you can say, you know what, this is a deal breaker for me. And yes, change can happen. But again, Lori, yes, if the person don't want change, there's nothing that we can do. They always say at weddings sometimes that the woman go in and think, I don't remember the joke, but basically saying that, one of them go in and think that, they will never change. And then the other one going and thinking that, I wish they will change. It not make no sense. if it is that we are just there wishing for somebody to change, if it don't change up here, so as Patrick said, then it will not happen. And we need to be able to be strong to say this is a deal breaker. If this is not happening, then we can't happen.
Me can talk. Can that's a yes, that's a
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
we don't want to chat too much, So that's why I'm just forget to go ahead. But I want to agree with Margot, almost 100%, probably 99. The part that I probably won't agree with, and it's because of my own personal bias to how humans work. It's because I hate change, to be honest. I really despise change. I know that it's necessary, but I don't like change. And another thing is I don't think that because a person doesn't want to change, meaning I don't think it means that the person will not change, and that goes over more for changing for the better. I honestly believe that everybody has the potential to change for the better, even if their mindset is still in the same place. I can't like speak to how yet, but like I know because of my own personal bias, right? So y'all don't have to take that from me because it's a personal thing, but I was putting that out there. But like as Marco was saying previously, about the deal breakers and communication is a huge thing for all relationships, all interpersonal interactions. Communication is almost paramount, right? And this is something that I saw somebody talking about the other day, that even though it's not relevant to like the institution of a relationship that we're talking about generally now, I think it's relevant to understanding how or where we are at with our partner/partners. So the dating process or the dating culture in Jamaica has been diluted, meaning that because of like movies and the effect of media and even the whole financial effect of people no longer court females, and even feminism kind of like mash up a whole courting situation, because why court a woman? Why a woman can't court a man? All of these wonderful arguments that can be brought. But the fact of the matter is dating culture has been destroyed here and everywhere else. But it's something that we need to look into, because one, there are different stages to the intimacy of a relationship, as Margot would have said previously. You have, and these are not official guys, but you have the talking phase where you're now interested in this person. You meet the person, you have an interest with the person. Patrick is shaking his head, but he can rebut afterwards. He can he can rebut afterwards, but this is just how I see it, right? You're meeting the person, you're interested in the person. Then you have the dating phase. In my opinion, again, Patrick, because I don't want you to run me down yet. But yeah, you have the dating phase where you guys have both come to the, you Patrick, all right. You've both come to the agreement that, hey, we are both going to be looking into both of our interests and approaching this like a relationship and see how we mesh together. And then you have the institution of the relationship where you both agree that, hey, we're in this together, we're intimately involved, right? And then you go further and make it an exclusive relationship, whereas you are now bound to each other in a way that outside parties should not have more than, if any, influence on how your relationship progresses or changes. So I mean, again, Patrick is going to rebut, but I'm just saying these are things that people no longer look at anymore.
Okay, so before Patrick decides to take on Gio, um, there's two things. One of them was what Margot was saying about changes in a relationship. How to phrase this? Okay, so I think when somebody meets somebody, their automatic thought is this is how they are going to stay forever. And that's not true. Because persons experience life like everybody else. You're not the only person in life, and everybody else is a side character. They experience their own problems too. So they are going to change based on the experience and the knowledge that they have gained. So I believe that when you are entering into a relationship, you need to take into consideration the fact that they are going to change. They are not going to always stay who they are right at this instant. And sometimes your actions change them because you may do something that they like and they will make it known, same as how you can do something that they don't like and they can change their behavior to better accommodate what you do. That's all I wanted to say, Patrick. You can now go ahead and take on Gio.
Ladies and gentlemen, much to your disappointment, I shall not be taking on Gio today. Um, I don't think it is the purview of this discussion for us to discuss what proper dating cycles are just yet. If that is a question, Madam Host, I will gladly take it on. But I will not take on Gio because these young people nowadays, you see, these young people nowadays, they have some perceptions, and those of us of the older class, us non-millennials have some strong viewpoints on this we are talk nature that has come up, and we're not gonna tackle it right now. We're gonna proceed, Madam Host. Go right ahead.
All right. Again, can everyone hear me? I've been chipping in and out.
Yes, we can.
All right. So, Miss Margot,
Margot, that's fine.
yes, you had your hand raised, so you can go ahead, and then after you, we'll just move on.
Okay. I wanted to, I'm not taking on Gio. No, I'm not taking you on Gio, but I just want to say that in terms of, for me, there are some words, again, that might be triggers to some persons. So you're saying that you don't like growth, or for some persons don't like change. Then I would switch that word and say growth. I know you love growing. There must be something, if it is that you did something last week and this week you did better. That is growth, and that is change, actually. And so sometimes I think in relationships, she a try change me. A man would say she a try change me, or a woman would say, he might try change me. When he met me, this was how I was. But the fact is that we said earlier that a healthy relationship is one that will embrace growth. So it's not about, just simply changes, but growing over the years, growing over the months. If the same person you are, when you met this person a year from now, then something kind of wrong. Because as Laurie said, there must be something that you will see that is there impact. Let me put it that way. Is there impact? Did that person impact your life in any way? And if they did, then you will take on those, probably a mindset, probably it is that you decide to cook rice the way they cook it. That for me is growth, and that is change. So, it must be that we're able to embrace growth. So even if we don't want to use the word change, and even if it is, we are scared of change, because sometimes the unknown is very scary, and that's fine. But we should, strive to grow in any relationship.
Okay, thank you. So we're just going to go to this question, which is, do you believe unhealthy relationships are preventable? And we're going to start with Lori.
The question is,
Could you repeat the question, please?
Okay, the question is, do you believe that unhealthy relationships are preventable?
all right, do I believe unhealthy relationships are preventable? Not at all. It's a part of life. Um, pardon me for saying this, but people are crosses. Everybody in the world are crosses. Man and woman are crosses. You gotta have the bad crosses, you have the good crosses, but everybody are crosses. So you can't avoid it because to me, and I believe your first relationship ever is with your parents. Now, your parents' relationship can start off good and then it becomes unhealthy, or it can be unhealthy from the start. Then you have friendships. You are going to encounter persons that do backstabbing, persons will lie, persons will betray you. You have persons, you're going to encounter persons that are there for you. You're going to experience persons that claim to them that they feel and them don't actually that they feel. You're going to experience it all. It's a part of life because people are crosses. This is just my opinion, by the way. Then you're going to go into relationships and you are going to be dealing with other human beings that have trauma as well, and sometimes they will portray their trauma onto you, and even though they're not supposed to do it because you're supposed to heal before you enter a relationship, people don't actually follow that and they portray their trauma onto you, and it's going to be unhealthy in some sense because people are crosses. Get me I say? You can't avoid it. It's a part of life. You have the good, the bad, and the indifferent in world. So I call everybody in the world crosses. If I like you, you're a good crosses. If I don't like you, you're a bad crosses. If you're good for me, you're a good crosses. If you're bad for me, you're a bad crosses. Get what I'm saying? So no, I don't think it's unavoidable.
Can I jump on this question?
Go right ahead, Karim.
Um, the question was, please, so I know what I'm answering. Could you just repeat the question? But I don't want to misinterpret what you're asking.
The question is, do you believe unhealthy relationships are unavoidable or preventable? Correction, preventable.
So I think they're preventable. Yes and no. Yes. I think they are preventable if you assess the situation before you commit yourself to a relationship, whether it is a friendship, because a friendship is a relationship. So whether it's a friendship or a lovey-dovey, intimate type of relationship. And I think this is what Jay was hinting at when he says that courting is dead. Because if we were courting people, if we were really getting to know people before we committed to a relationship, whether, as I said, whether that's a friendship or an intimate relationship, we would have been able to see all the things that we were talking about before, the red flags, the things about them that just shows that a relationship not gonna work, all of these things. And that would have prevented you from entering into an unhealthy relationship. And that's why I say I think it's preventable. But where the no comes in, where I think it's not preventable, because we don't do these things. I think it was Patrick that quoted that I think, I don't know I don't remember who he quoted from, but it was the quote that was saying that, we're in a state of always seeking happiness. We're in a perpetual state of unhappiness. We always want to be happy. So that hunger and drive to always want to be happy, coupled with the whatever trauma or bad experiences we've had over the years, it blinds us to certain things. But because Margo look nice, she talk nice, man a business about her other traits, make a deal with her, because I just want to be happy. And these are actually the things that we have to look at. You know what I'm saying? It's not that unhealthy relationships are preventable, is that we rush into things sometimes too quick, too suddenly. We don't assess the situation. And even if we rush into an unhealthy relationship, we don't how do I say this so it doesn't come out? We're not willing to now work with the unhealthy person to fix the unhealthy traits and make the relationship. We just want to cut and go through. And so it's really that all these things come back down to how the relationship started. If there was a process then you would have known how the person is. You'd have known what you're getting yourself into. So that when you're in the relationship and you see the unhealthy traits and unhealthy situations coming out, you would have been able to know, to have a way to deal with it. You would now be able to. So it's not that unhealthy relationships are unavoidable, but it's because we don't go through the process. We just rush into things. And it's also, I think it was L'Oreal that was saying that our first relationship is with our parents. No, a lot of us have broken relationships with our parents. So we don't even know what a healthy relationship looks like. So we wouldn't even know what to look for in a friend, in a healthy friendship or a healthy intimate relationship. Because the first relationship, as L'Oreal said, is with our parents. And a lot of us don't have good relationships with our parents. And so we don't have any frame of reference to go from. So that's why I say, yes, it can be avoidable or preventable, and in some cases, no, it cannot. It cannot. So I don't think it's a one size fit all. Yes, it's preventable. No, it's preventable. I think it's a individual thing, based on the person's background and who they are and stuff like that.
Okay, yes. Thank you, Kareem. And Gio, your hand is raised. You may go ahead. And after you, we're going to move on.
All right. I'm gonna make this as quick as possible. I'm not so much chat enough. So yeah, agreeing with Karim completely. Another thing I want to look at is the fact that preventing unhealthy relationships is different than preventing unhealthy tendencies in relationships. So it's not that we're going to be venturing off into this perfect euphoric Cinderella story. No, we're going to have the ups and downs, the maybes, maybe so's, and so on and so forth. That's not what we're mentioning here. What we're mentioning is preventing yourselves from entering a relationship that is going to be majorly unhealthy for both parties or all parties involved, right? So, for example, you see that you hear the red flags that we've spoken about, the distrust, the commitment issues, the non-consent, and if you realize these things, so you're not supposed to venture off in a relationship with them people. You just know from the get-go, right? But if you enter into something with someone or some people and you are now realizing certain tendencies, as Lori had said, and as Margot had said, then you can try to negotiate change. You can try to work through and grow, as Margot said, right? But if these things are recurring, as Patrick said, then it becomes either abuse or unhealthy. And that is when you want to step back. Goes all the way back to the dating culture. You would have realized these things from vetting with these people, right? And then your decision would have been made in that period of time. So it's very dependent and sometimes I'd even say circumstantial.
Okay, so Margot, your hand is raised, but while it is open, I'd like to also throw another question at you, which would be how do everything that has been mentioned and spoken about unhealthy relationships, how does it affect one in their social life?
Okay. All right. Going back to what, person said before about unhealthy relationships being, avoidable. I so agree with, different points that all of you made, especially looking at the tendencies, Gio. So we see the tendencies before. Sometimes it's not the relationship that you get into, but the individual, you see those tendencies and we tend to steer clear of them. But one of the things I wrote down a while ago is that we are very good at wearing masks. So, we have on the mask, we think that, this person is who they portray themselves to be, and not realizing until we're in the relationship. And then guess what? One of the things that I'm always mindful of that my grandparents will tell me is that every day you learn something new about your spouse or the persons that you're in a relationship with. So it is sometimes unavoidable in the way that you are going to meet upon some things that you did not encounter before the relationship. But also, I want to say that too, because persons are saying yes and no. If you see those tendencies, then those can be avoidable. But sometimes we are not able to see it. Some are really good at camouflaging or dark areas, if we want to say it like that. So yes, you ask about social, how it affects our social relationships. Socially, when we think of social relationships, how we interact with others, it doesn't necessarily mean, one of the things I'll say to persons is that some relationships are fleeting. They didn't come to stay. And one example I'll use is you're in a bus, the person beside you make a comment because the driver made a bad drive. And you look at each other and say, what happened to him, man? And then from that, you're having a conversation. It does not necessarily mean that it's going to go further. But sometimes it is that it's more of our personality and, you know, those things that we take in ourselves that will affect how we interact with persons. So for example, if it is that you're always told as a child within that family relationships that you're ugly and you're fat and you're this and you're that, the very moment somebody gives you a good compliment, a stranger said, whoa, I like that dress. You're already thinking, he not even like you, but him just says so. Not realizing that all you have to say is just, oh, thank you. And so it affects our self-esteem and our self-confidence and our interaction and that kind of thing. But I also, in thinking about how it affects, we have to look on the first relationship. And as Lori said, with our parents, how does that prepare us for other relationships? And I know some of us are resilient, but again, if it is that we realize that these are things that are affecting us, it is good to introspect. How do I fix this about me? And we're talking about relationships, and there's one that we really did not touch on, the intrapersonal relationship with self. How do I talk about me? How do I view me? How do I feel about me as a person? And I think that is going to be, even before parental relationships, how I feel about myself is going to affect how I interact with other persons. So I think that needs to be fixed first. It can be detrimental if it is that there are underlying things that we have been through, that persons have been through, and they have never addressed them. So if persons compliment us, for example, and not only compliment, I was having a discussion with somebody, I think yesterday, and I was saying that sometimes some girls are in a place where if a man says something to them, I look them. And it can be both ways. Or gee, him like me, you see? Or make him go away. Me no want no man. He never said anything like that. The only thing he said was, whoa, that's a nice dress. Or that look good. Maybe his wife had one and it reminds him of it. Not necessarily that he's thinking of anything, sexual towards that person. But again, I really think, our fundamental relationships does affect our social interaction. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so yes, it does. Thank you. Patrick, you may go ahead. And then...
All right, so forgive me. This will be slightly lengthy, forgive me, but I'll try to go as quickly as possible. Two things. How does to answer the question, how does your relationships, or how the relationships you've had affect your other social interactions? Let me backtrack a little bit first, and to the benefit of the crowd, I will now address Gio's old points from way back when. Avoiding unhealthy relationships is definitely possible. It's definitely possible, and you do it by properly dating. as Kareem said, we don't actually properly date. The way you avoid an unhealthy relationship is to date properly. Now, to elaborate on that, I have to kind of go into how we date properly. So this is how I will now answer Gio's previous statement from before. Understand this first and foremost. We live in an age now of instant gratifications and titles. Everybody wants to feel good right now, and it has to happen this minute. And everybody wants to know where they stand, and they want to put a label on things, right? Everybody wants to be labeled as something. And even if you're the only person in that category, you want to have a label for it, right? So we have become big in this generation on instant gratification and labels. Here's how that doesn't work with proper dating. Proper dating takes time, because dating in and of itself, it's not even a cycle, it's a long list of steps. But I compound it when I'm teaching persons. I compound it into about five easy steps for a relationship. You have dating, then you have exclusivity, then you have courtship, engagement, and then marriage. 5 stages of a relationship. Now, each stage of a relationship is preceded by a conversation,
Patrick
right?
is for a bit, but you can just repeat the stages.
No problem. So it's 5 main stages. So it's dating, exclusivity, courting, engagement, marriage, right? And then, as I said, each of those 5 stages are preceded by a conversation. For you to dating, the act of dating, what we understand as dating, is what people nowadays call way of talk. And I don't like that statement, because it's not just way of talk. There's more to it than that. Dating is the act of putting yourself out there, right? It's the act of saying, I am ready to meet someone. That is what dating is. It is quite literally the act of it's almost like you're putting yourself on the market. That is what dating is. Now, people misconstrue dating because they say, oh, how you can be dating three. Dating in a traditional sense was done between multiple persons. Dating simply said, as I said, you're on the market. People window shop all the time. That doesn't mean anything like so. You have to go out, put yourself out there, find out what you like, and you do that through dating. You go out and you say, all right, going out with Janelle today, and go to a movie. I like the movie. Movie was nice, and I understand something more about myself and what I like. I go to Ashley next week or next month or whenever, and we'll go to the beach. I really like the beach, but at the same time, I still now learn something about what I like and what works for me. That is the process of dating. As I said, it's preceded by a conversation. You have to ask somebody, hey, listen, declare your interest. I'm interested in you. Can we can we see where this goes? That's how you start dating, right? Exclusivity now is that point of dating where you say, all right, listen, I am now sure of what I want. I have seen what is there to be offered to me, and I make a definitive choice. Because a lot of the people don't understand that dating comes with choosing. An important aspect of dating is choosing, right? So in exclusivity, you choose someone to be your partner, right? And here's where the persons like to come with them, where our younger generation likes to come with this question: what are we? And me personally, because, and as Lori says, everybody across this, I'll give you a crosses answer, and I'll tell you, say, we are farmers. Bum, 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 bum. and, and really and truly, that's just to give you an answer. But once you are dating someone exclusively, you're in a relationship. Like, don't get it confused. Once you are dating someone exclusively, you're in a relationship. That is why when you're watching these TV shows and they talk to you about relationships, they say, "Oh, I used to date so and so," or "I used to be in a relationship with so and so." They didn't say, "Oh, that's my man," or "Oh, that's my." We, as a generation now, have put certain titles towards people, and sometimes persons aren't ready for what those titles mean. So you ascribe a title to somebody before they're worthy of it, or before they're even ready for it. So these proper cycles and these proper channels, you have to go through them to avoid certain things. And as I say, it takes time. And some people aren't willing to sit down and say, all right, we are date exclusively. We are date exclusively. Things are get a little bit more serious now. We're gonna get a little bit more open with each other. Now we can see, all right, boom, where we're going from there. And then when you're dating exclusively, now you have another conversation at the end of it, and you say, hey, listen, we have been dating for a little bit amount of time now. I want to see if we can get a little bit more serious. That is the entering into courtship now, because into getting more serious, yeah, you're trying to see how you're gonna live your lives together. You're trying to see if this person is compatible with you long term. And then you know how the rest of the story goes. Somebody now has to make another part of the conversation. And traditionally, you have to go down on your one knee and pop a nice big question. And that is where engagement starts. And then now the final question is an external party where ask you that question. Whether you do it in front of a pastor, in front of your best friend, or whatever the trend is nowadays. Now, I like the pastor thing. Right? You go in front of a pastor, and the pastor says, will you have this person to love and to? That's another conversation, that's another question. A question is now asked, and you have to give a response because it comes back down to that consent. Conversation, communication, consent. All of these things are intricate at each level of a relationship. Now, as Laurie was saying, the first relationship you ever have is with your family. And I say family, I don't just say parents, because some persons, for whatever situation, their parents aren't in their life, whether it is by choice or by circumstance. But you have a primary caregiver. That is your first real relationship. And that is the only relationship in your life, but with your parents, is the only relationship you can't choose. Every other relationship in your life is by your choice. You pick it and you sustain it. The only one you don't choose is the one with your parents, or as I said, that primary caregiver or family. Let me say family. Family is the only relationship you can't choose, right? Now, how that relationship is portrayed to you, how that how that dynamic is portrayed to you. Single parent, nuclear, extended, it affects how you grow. Persons who are growing in a single parent household are mentally conditioned differently. Persons who grow in a nuclear family are conditioned differently. It's about what you're exposed to that shapes how you react to certain situations. Because if you are in a situation where, for example, you live in a nuclear family, every day you see a father get up, him wash the dish, him take out the garbage, then him go wake up your mother cook the breakfast and whatever. To you, that's normality. And it becomes routine in your mind that that is what is normal to you. And because that is what is normal to you and it's what's accepted to you, it becomes part of now your own expectations. Right? And there's the controversial side to that where you might wake up every day and your father roll over in him bed. Him say, breakfast. And he mumble two things to your mother. And your mother have to get up and show whatever. Or you grew up in a single parent household. Your mother had to work two jobs. You probably have to start work from early. And it conditioned you to say, listen, I don't want that for myself. So you have to say, listen, how do I get out of this situation? So the relationships you're exposed to and the dynamic of those relationships helps you form your own set of standards, right? And that's something that we try to teach a lot at the GAJ, having your own set of standards and principles, because your standards and principles are what drive your social interactions. It's what helps you to determine those red flags. It's what helps you to say, all right, I will accept this from what I will not accept. Your standards and your principles. So as Margot was saying, finally got it right. I said Margot. As Margot was saying, right? It is how you are socialized and it is how these relationships affect you that determine what you do next. There's a popular saying, I don't know if it's young people have it or if it's an old time saying, but there's a saying. They say you can't use the same fat fry everybody or the same oil fry everybody. what happens to us in relationships or in situations? We become so conditioned to a certain way of thinking, and we are so exposed to something that it becomes what we call in psychology operant conditioning or classical conditioning. And it stays in your mind, and it becomes a part of now who you are, and it becomes a part of your expectations and your daily routine. And because of those things, you now become expectant of your other relationships to be like this, your other interactions to be like that. And you wonder why this friend not treat me like how this friend do. And you almost start to forget that these people are different individuals. And I think it was Laurie that said everybody, you feel like you're the hero of your own story and everybody's a side character. Really and truly that is the case, because you are the main character of your own story. Because at the end of the day, you are writing your story. Whoever you allow into your life to affect that story, you have to make them a main character. You have to give them that role. You have to give them that power in your life. So these dynamics and these relationships, because of how they affect your state of mind, because of how they affect your behavior and how they affect you, that in turn affects how you expect your next relationship to operate and how your next relationship should be, or even tells you, all right, this is what you want from what you don't want in your next relationship. So that is how it helps you condition your mind for socialization and everything the like. Sorry for chat so long. I apologize. It's just a whole lot, but that's a great question. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Patrick, and there's no problem. Giovanni, you've been sitting there waiting for a while now. You may go ahead.
Yeah, for a good while. All right. It's mainly because Patrick did take on my whole structure for courtship and all of that. I did preface and say that it's not necessarily something that was thought out. It's just something that I've adapted. It can be fleshed out, and I do agree with some of Patrick's structure. But at the same time, I don't want to simply acquit how we interact, especially given that there's now a generation gap that Patrick and Margot have explicitly identified between us. And with the generations and with the new times coming into play, then certain things would have, as you guys purported, changed or grown. I'll use the word change now because it's not necessarily a positive one. So a lot of our younger people are not looking into marriage nowadays, and marriage is not always the end product of all relationships. And I kind of think it to be a little bit too optimistic or conclusive. Let me say that. I think it too conclusive to include marriage into the dating culture, right? But it does have its realm. It does have its necessity to relationships, and so it can hold its place there. Another thing I want to point out is that not all persons, and you know this, Patrick, because you're a psychologist, not all persons ascribed to Judeo-Christian construct. That construct that says that we are supposed to get married and that there's man and woman and all of these lovely things. No, I'm looking at it from a very generalized perspective. I don't know if that's what you were doing, but from what I heard you talking about, it was very Judeo-Christian in nature. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But looking at that and looking at the generational gap that we're experiencing, I just wanted to make it clear that there might have to be some renegotiation of how we look at this process of getting into a serious relationship. Yes, you have merit when you say that this generation don't necessarily want to always have serious relationship. That is so true. As Laurie said, people are crosses. I don't agree with that general statement, but people are crosses. You have crosses out there. People identify as crosses and junk and all of them something there, and they feel it is a free pass to do foolishness. I don't agree with it. Granted, there are circumstances that people fall under that make them want to acquit themselves with these titles. As you had said, Patrick, we're in an age of title, and you said something else. You said titles and something else. Jog my memory, please, because I really want to remember it.
I think it was titles and
Titles,
rules.
titles and roles. And this brings me back to the thing that I wanted to talk after Margot had answered that question. Roles and role fulfillment. Now, debaters use the term role fulfillment to say this is your task in the debate and you have to do this or we'll lose marks. In the same sense, I believe that relationships have that thing, that role fulfillment, that when you are in a certain dynamic, I'm no longer going to stay in the realm of relationship now. When you're in a certain dynamic, you have to identify your role and you have to carry out your role the way that it should be carried out. You need to identify the rules and the structures and all these things that come with your role, right? You have people who subscribe to a certain community, whereas relationships are seen as dynamics that have very rigid, frigid, tangible structures. And these people have to subscribe to these things. Yes, I'm going there, Kion. We
Kion.
have this, those people have, sorry, I told me I talk fast. She knows someone for pronounce her name. But yeah, um, those people have to subscribe to these rules and regulations very closely, right? And so when you look at the dating aspect, I'm basically taking from their frigid structure and placing it into our everyday lives, because guess what? That is how it is transversely, right? You begin to see interest in a person. And I use the word talking because I wanted to stay socially relevant in my discussion. I could have used a lot of other synonyms, but most of the persons who are watching now are going to equate the word talking to what we're talking about, right? So maybe, you know, your semiotic might tell you, or the semantic of the word might make you feel uncomfortable with using it, right? As you said, the first stage was dating. For us, it's not necessarily dating, and the meaning of dating for us is different, because you're saying that dating makes you somewhat available to exploration. But in this day and age, or in this time period, we are taking the term dating to mean that you are now in something that is not completely exclusive, but you're observing certain rules and regulations between you and these people or persons, right? It doesn't make you a window shopper. It makes you art. Let me take an example. I have a trophy. I have the trophy in my hand. I can give it to somebody if I so please. If the trophy doesn't want to be given to that person, I will not give it to the person. But it's not necessarily seeing the trophy on a stand and everybody can take up the trophy whenever they feel, forget a feel of it, if them like it, if them don't like it, and then put it back. It seems close, but it's really different. It really is. And I want us to understand that when we're talking about the talking, the dating, the relationship, and the exclusive relationship. And another thing that you said that I wanted to make clear, conversations that have to preface each of these stages, yes, Patrick, very relevant, very true, because we have to always, almost imperatively, make sure that there is a negotiation that occurs before we enter another stage of a relationship. And people abuse that, right? They'll say fleeting things, as Margot would say. They'll say fleeting things and give you the impression that you're at this stage in a relationship when you're really not in their mind, right? And communication is important for this. So, oh God, I know that I talked a lot. And Patrick probably disagreed a lot. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
Okay. Patrick,
But
it
yeah,
is your
man.
turn. You are
Yeah, man.
last for this question. Very
Yeah,
last for this question.
cause let me tell you why. I only disagree on 2 points. I understand a lot of what you're saying. Here are two major points of disagreement for me. You say a lot of people don't subscribe to the Judeo-Christian mindset of that it has to end in marriage, but it's not just a Judeo-Christian thing, because all cultures across the world, and if you do anthropology and sociology, they'll tell you every society across the world and every religious background has two universal practices, that is of death and burial and of marriage. And an important thing I want us to understand as we go forward and as we have this discussion, A lot of the things are changing now because we want to change them. Some of these things have set definition and set rules and set guidelines, but because they don't fit our wants and our purposes, we change it to fit what we want it to be, right? And I think that is my disagreement with the whole dating versus talking thing. If we are talking and talking and talk, so what? We're having a conversation. That's fine. I'm having a conversation with Ifa right now, Morgan. So, but you actionize the word talking to almost equate it to dating. And when you do that, you diminish the word dating because dating has a certain value to it already. And I'm not trying to take away from what the generation has made the whole way of talking to be. I'm not trying to take that value away from you, but you're trying to change an existing practice to fit how you how the generation wants it to be, or you're trying to fit an existing practice to our mindset, and we're trying to change it. And that's part of culture, and that's part of how it is. I'm just saying, don't call something dating and then want it to mean something else. Call it what it is. Because if I say me and somebody are dating, it means we went out for coffee last week, and maybe next month we'll go out for a drink. That's dating. So I'm just saying, don't equate two things that aren't actually the same. If you and somebody are talk, call it that. And we done it this one. Nobody say we are talk and then we are go date. No, yeah, get some references crossed. You see me? That's for me a disagreement point. Because the two words mean different things for both persons, for both sets of persons. And as I said, you said a lot, and I agree with a lot of what you said. Just those 2 points really never 100% win.
Patrick, just
Um,
before you move, just before we run out, I just want to drop this that I hear what you're saying as it relates to talking and dating and diminishing and the whole cultural shift and stuff like that. But what I really want to say is I don't think that is necessarily that people are trying to diminish dating with when they use talking, but I think that it's and I really don't want to say it without making it seem sorry, I just realized I'm making I don't want it to seem as if um it's a bad thing, but I think the concept of or the ideology of talking is because it's easier for people of a certain class, and when I say class, I mean like the structure, to understand and get the concept of dating without actually using the word dating. And I think that's where the concept or ideology of talking came from. Because a lot of people they didn't grow up in a society where dating was a thing. The research shows that this generation is one of the generation that's less likely to get married. That's not even on the books for this generation. And so terms, I don't want to call them old terms or archaic terms, but terms such as marriage, dating, courting, those things are way out of the norm for this generation, and especially people from a certain class or certain background. And so certain words or certain terms and phrases and ideologies would have to be put in place to fill that gap so that they would be able to understand and can relate to the concept of what marriage and dating and stuff like that meant or means without there being a disconnect in terms of understanding. So I don't think I really understand what you're saying, to be honest, but I don't think that it's a diminished thing and stuff like that. But I just really think that it came out of people. The idea of it came out of wanting people to be able to understand a concept. So breaking it down so it's easier for them to understand. But that's just my take on it because honestly, I live
Mhm.
in a space where if you say dating, um, if you say dating, they would understand dating to mean marriage or somewhere close to that. Whereas talking is what they understand dating to be, and marriage is not in the picture at all. So there are people who and they live in this environment and this space where it's really common law marriage run the place. Nobody propose, nobody now go through the whole process of it. And so they're not used to or familiar to these things. And so to take away from them missing out on the concept and idea of it all, there have been filler words and filler phrases put in to represent the idea.
And you say, I love how you put that, you know. I love how you put it because I think that is exactly what it is. You're using something to teach a generation something that they did not fully know or fully understand or not fully able to relate to. But since we are all students of life, right? And I'm pretty sure anybody who's ever been to a class or been to a lecture or any form of education, you'll understand the point I'm about to make. Even though you were never exposed to the theory and you are given an example or something to make it understandable to you, what the aim is for you to get back to the actual theory. Because if these persons were never exposed to it, if they were never taught it, they will always stay in that situation that they are in. And if you never teach somebody the proper thing, and you keep teaching them the watered down version or the filler version of it, that is what they're going to think is the proper thing. So we have to know, be careful when we have forums like this, because we have a right or a duty to teach persons the proper thing, right? So that we don't let them become too accustomed to what is the norm, right? Or what is trending, right? And because we get so used to what is the norm and what is trending, we forget the what is and what it is supposed to be, right? And that is my only point. I get that it is you're trying to teach somebody or you're trying to expose somebody to something that they might not have had. They tell you some statistics right now that about, don't quote me on this, but it's about 50% of the households in Jamaica are single parent. And if we do nothing to change that statistic, it will become the norm and it will become the majority because people will think that is what is okay. So for me, you have to teach the right thing. I have to teach it to you in a way that you can understand it, sure. But at the end of the day, if I get to an exam and a teacher asks you, what is abuse for argument's sake? You can go put on the exam, oh, one boy lit the girl and I abuse that. That is how you understand abuse, but you have to give them back the substance of what abuse actually is. So, yeah, use the fillers them and yeah, use the fillers them for bridge a gap. I want to address the gap itself. I don't want to try fill the gap, I want to bridge the gap. I don't want to fill it up with something. Then like oh Jamaican road stay Patola farm 2 weeks later, and then we have to go fill it up again. I want to fix the road one time and level the playing field one time so that everybody get that understanding from the jump, so that even if you're never exposed to it, you know what it is, you understand what it is, and you understand the purpose of that institution.
All right. I'm terribly sorry, I hope. But something Gio and Patrick said. Okay, so Gio said that there is a age difference, right? And our generation, when we use the term we attack, it literally means um we are getting to know one another, basically, right? And I understand what you mean about the stages of dating, courtship, and everything. But you said it before, culture changes. What you know is not what we know. And I think it goes back to our parents because even though you said 50%, it's actually more than 50% um, of our parents are single parents and they don't necessarily teach you that, right? So our generation uses the term we are taught to equivalent, I say it right now, to be equivalent to dating, getting to know one another. Then when we use the term we are dating, this means that we are exclusive, we're dating exclusively. just to give you what I think Jay was meant to say is that the terms that you guys use are not exactly the terms we use. They know what it is, but they don't exactly know where it stems from, if you get what I'm saying. And to be completely honest, you may teach these stages to many different people, but we are still in our generation where the culture is changing. And to them, these stages are going to be, oh, at all time something that this is a new thing, we attack. You get what I'm saying? It's not going to stick with them that it's not we attack, it's just dating exclusively, stuff like yada yada yada. Right? It's not going to stick with them because that's just how the younger generation is now. Yes, I found. Let's stop now.
All right. Thank you. Jesus.
If you're talking, we're not hearing you. You've been frozen.
I think Iva has frozen, guys. We finally broke her with all the conversation.
You know, since Ifa is stuck for a little,
Frozen.
she's going to be
Mhm.
coming on back soon. But one of the things I'm here sitting and listening and thinking about is the dynamics now of a definition of relationships. And in terms of what Patrick is saying, Jerry is saying, everyone else is saying, we have to be mindful that in terms of, cultures and subcultures, the language is going to be different. And that we, in terms of, teaching and helping persons to understand some stuff, we have to also understand what they're saying. So, Gio and Lori, you spoke about what it means in terms of the talking and so on. And I do agree with you in terms of it's different in some sense. And I want to say that it's not only about age difference and those gaps, but there are different groups of persons that are now popping up. And what we see as toxic, because we are looking on a two-person relationship, for example, or a male and female relationship, for example, it's different for them. And so how do we speak to those persons who are in those kind of unhealthy relationship? Because when we look at it, we're saying, that cannot be healthy any at all. But in terms of for them, it's going to seem different. And so, I do agree with, and it's something for us to really look into what Lori and Gio is saying, and what Patrick is also saying, because the dynamics it really changed. Nothing seemed to be the same, as 5 years from now, it's going to be different. This conversation is not going to be, maybe not even going to be relevant, because they're going to be looking and saying, no, it's not like this now. So I'm actually glad for the dynamics kind of coming together and listening to both sides of it, really. Ifa?
Okay, yes, I
Okay,
am
she's
back.
back.
Okay.
Okay, so sorry about that. Now we are actually going to jump hot topic section. And
Okay, I will repeat that because you glitched out for a bit.
okay, am I being heard?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
All right. So now we're actually going to jump into our hot topic section. For questions for this section include: do you think mainstream media influences unhealthy relationships? Are they only bad for romantic relationships? And does it make it harder for teens to spot unhealthy relationships? Before we start, we're actually going to allow a brave participant of the Zoom meeting to join our discussion. So it doesn't matter if you are knowledgeable on the topic, your opinions are valuable. So we're going to ask one brave participant to raise their hand, and then you'll be able to participate in the Zoom panel. And we're just going to give them 5 seconds or to volunteer themselves. Okay, so we have Keon Hayden. Keon, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kyun Hayden. Good afternoon.
All right, nice. All right, so we'll start off this first question with Giovanni.
Oh, okay. Do you think that mainstream media influences unhealthy relationships? As a media student, I can safely say that mainstream media does influence unhealthy relationships, but it also influences healthy relationships. And so it can be said that mainstream media affects all sorts of relationships. But on the premise of it affecting unhealthy relationships, ah boy. So this is going to be the conversation going over into all of these questions. And it is going to be what effect does media have on us, on our socialization, on our internalization, and all these wonderful izations that Patrick will be able to talk about later on. But essentially, what has happened is media has the power to coerce us into thinking that this is the reality, when in a sense, it might not be. And reality is very fickle sometimes because there's a theory that says the cultivation theory of media says that, you know, once mainstream media puts a certain thing to you and continually feeds you this thing, you're going to want to emulate what that thing is. And slowly but surely, that will become your reality, right? So, say for instance, we have Usain Bolt to the word thing, right? The thing over, yeah. Um, Mainstream media made that a thing. It made it a trend, and from a trend, it became a symbol. And that symbol has become, sort of synonymous with Jamaica because of Usain Bolt, and that is through media. In the same sense, with unhealthy relationships, right? Media will put out a certain trait in either a partner or a relationship, and people start to accept this trait. So, say for instance, let me give an example. Say that oh God, I love this. Having more than one partner without telling your partner. So basically giving bun. Jamaican media loves to talk about male partners giving bun as if it is okay. It ain't. It is not. So that's one trait in an unhealthy relationship, right? And media puts this to us continually, rapidly, consistently, man for have enough woman in a bungle and all them something there and rate it and blah blah blah. In the same sense, it's not right, but it's media. It's what media is telling our little boys and our young men. It's right. It's what media is telling
Mentally
our
careless.
females. Huh? And it's telling what our young females is right as well. So sometimes them look on it and them know so them feel away because them know so them man have an next woman. But guess what? Because cartels say, yo, the man for have more than one woman. You gotta sit back and you gotta say, well, them say this, so me I gotta accept it. Right? So that is how mainstream media can influence unhealthy relationships or actually begin unhealthy relationships. So yeah.
Okay, so just to add to that, do you think that some of the songs, such as I don't remember, it's who made it. I think it's Shensia or Aishana, the side chick anthem. Do you think that also contributes to
That was by Shensia.
Shensia? So yes,
And
because we were just you were mainly focusing on the males a while ago. So the females, do you think them, I don't know if you call this female empowerment, them embracing the side chick movement or
can
not,
I
but do you think that also contributes to the unhealthy relationship?
I want to answer this one. Gia, I can answer this one.
Yeah, but I'd love if Keon actually like talk about it first and then you jump onto it. I'd love that. I
Okay,
want to hear what she have to
great.
say.
Yeah, firstly, stop butchering my name. Thank you.
Kion, let's go.
Thank you. My opinion on the whole female mentality when it comes to that whole side chick thing, to be honest, it's degrading for themselves, and like to think about that a woman would actually put herself in a place where she's sharing her significant other with someone else and is proud to do that. I think it's different. Sorry, give me a second.
Okay, all right. Well, while she waits, I don't think the correct term to use is share, because in a polygamous relationship, you are sharing partners, right? Um, in my opinion, right, being a side chick is not anything to be proud of. Reasons why I say that is because when you are a side chick, you know that the male is not being faithful to the other female. You know. However, the other female has no idea. And when that female finds out, she is the one to go and be hurt because you already know. You already know which role you play. You already know that, yo, I'm me up on the side, right? So that's one. The second one would be that why would you put yourself in the position to be placed second? Because if anything happens, he's going to go to the main chick, as them call them, first, and then him come to you. You get what why would you put yourself in the position to be second? And I think this all stems back to your roles in the relationship and basically male view on the relationship as well. Because before the song Side Chick came out, Vibes Cartel and quite a few other male artists were singing about having side chicks, which made females think that it is better to be a side chick than to be the main person,
Excuse me,
right?
Lori.
Yes, Mama.
Okay, you see that comment you made with the Vibes Cartel? He had a song called "Set Me Free," where he was singing about having his baby mother, and she knowingly, you know, she knew that he had like a bag of other woman, and she tried to chop him up but he still continued to do it because, as he was saying, he's the breadwinner. All she can do is just sit down and watch.
And that's where like the roles come in. And I do believe that that is a form of abuse, because Miss Margot had stated earlier about financial abuse, where you do not, forgive me for saying Miss Margot, it's going to take a while for me to get out of that. You do not give your partner the option to have money in their hand just so that you're the only person that does it. That is a form of abuse. And because she knows that if she leaves, she's not going to be anywhere stable, she has it in her head that it's better to stay. And that contributes to a lot of the female thinking that being a side chick is okay and it's better than being the main person, which it is not. Guaranteed, how you approach a guy, or how you let somebody approach you, that will determine how they treat you. So if somebody approaches you in the sense where they, what would you say? Oh my God. Phew. What would I don't know how to say it in the correct sense, but if you let them approach you in a certain way, they are going to have it in their head that, yeah, she can be a side chick, I can tell her some of other woman and she not gonna do nothing about it. Rather than if you lead a certain life and you behave a certain way, when they approach you in that way, you can say to them, no, 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 you don't approach me like that. right? So we need to kind of understand that the way how you let people approach you is the way how they will treat you. And if you don't want certain treatment, don't let them approach you in certain ways. I see Gia hands up. Gia, I'm going to turn over to you.
Yeah. So just to tie it back into the question, because we've answered the question and gone some ways away from it. But basically, the media has given us this platform to play on in society to say that we're allowed to do certain things. And it's in the music industry, it's on social media as a form of media, and it's purported in mass media. You know, the films that we watch, the books that we read, and stuff like that. It's everywhere, and it tells us that we're supposed to be subscribing to this sort of lifestyle. So that is how it contributes to the unhealthy tendencies that make our relationships unhealthy.
Um, if I may
Go
jump
ahead,
in here,
Patrick.
so I made sure to stop and listen to what everybody was saying before I was gonna comment on anything. And yes, social media does influence and does affect how we view relationships and all of that. However, I want to take it another step further. There's a saying that social media and popular media and even mass media only echoes what is going on in a society. So when a Vibes Cartel or a Shensia or some other popular media artist goes up and them sing about side chick and them sing about having girl in a bungle and being okay with certain things, it is because that is what they have seen and that is what they have experienced, and they have now just put it to words and put it out there. Now, there's been many other songs that talk about why we shouldn't have girl in a bungle, why you should stick loyal to one person and all them things there, right? As I said, that there's a way back in the day, Vanessa Bling, aka Gasa Slim, did say one man, and it was a very popular song, right? And then because of these popular social media artists and these popular media personnel, they echo their own experience. And because we as a generation give them credibility and we feed into what they're saying and we buy into what they're saying because we give them some amount of social and moral authority, we allow them to influence us. There was a time, or even more recently, the song that came out, Equal Rights and Justice, that was somebody singing about probably something that they experience or their own beliefs. 99% of Jamaican man barring the squaddy probably lick out on the song and say, listen, I don't agree or I don't whatever. But the point of the matter is there are people in our society that will believe what these other persons believe and will continue to do what these other people do. There are women out there that don't want to be the primary option. They want to be the secondary option. And they will even pressure males into thinking that, listen, if you don't have two, three girl, you're a waste man. And that is some person's reality. And you can't take that away from some person. It's not just on the side of social media and popular media and mass media, because these things only echo what is going on in a society. And Gio can tell me if I'm wrong, all right, as a media student, but when you look at the effect social media has, because of how because of the importance we place on it now as a society and as a generation, we make it influential in our relationships. Because the second somebody goes online and them say, man a garbage, it's out there. And those persons who were voiceless for so long, those persons who were opinionless for so long, because this is now an anonymous site and nobody now come in your face, come beat you or whatever, you feel so empowered to say and do anything on this platform. And because it is such a far reaching platform, it extends and it connects to everybody. It makes us feel included and it makes us feel powerful. So those misconceptions of influence and power, and because it is an open space for us to share whatever we want to share, we have abused some of these social media outlets and some of these social media pages. So yes, they can negatively influence our relationship, but I still think it comes back down to us as a people placing such importance on what a Quiet Perry, on what a Shensia, on what a Popcorn and a Massacre, what these people say. We make them so important in our lives. And it's probably because some of us might even be lacking other role models in our life, that we substitute these persons as role models and as these authority figures, right? So the person who was not sorry, that grew up without a father, for example, and they hear how people speak of Vibes Cartel in such a high regard, they are now going to think of him in such a high regard, but they say, wow, he's so well respected by other men. And he's so well renowned amongst my peers. He must be someone of good rapport. So whatever him say now is your gospel. And you take that as your role model. You have people like Cardi B and Kim K now that saying, or that they're advocating for certain things because of their popularity, right? And because of that and that influence that they have. And those persons who may have been of a weak social mind, of easy persuasion, or because you of yourself don't have an identity, you ascribe to what they tell you because you are yearning for that level of guidance, that level of instruction. So yeah, these social media persons and personnel play an important part and they do negatively influence us. But I think the issue, the real issue, is not social media, because social media is a tool used by people. So I think it still comes back down to us as a people accepting certain things and saying, listen, that is what I want and that is what I think is okay. And I think that's what the real issue is.
All right, thank
Um,
you. Oh, Gio, go ahead, man.
yeah, just a quick thing. All that you're saying is true, Patrick. I want to put it in the lens of, as you said before, we always go back to the theory, right? When we had that huge discussion about the dating culture and all of that, we always go back to the theory. And even though media, social, mass, fine, all of these different aspects of media, even though media is a tool, it has evolved from just being a tool to being a construct, as you'd have heard from the Marxist perspective and some functionalist perspectives from sociology. So now it's become a structure in our society, right? So it is still a tool, but it is also a structure. And from what we understand from the structures, they somewhat govern how we behave in the social space, right? So not debasing or debunking anything you're saying, but I think you need to give a little bit more merit to what has become of media since it's grown since the 1930s, coming all the way up. It has had a huge impact on how we continue to live our lives. And one thing that we bring from the theory, one theory of which is the diffusion of innovation, I hope you're accustomed to that one, is whereas we accept certain things if it is purported to us in a certain medium, right? If it's put to us through a certain medium, and then you have 5 categories. Five? That's what I got? Yeah. You have the innovators, those who create and curate. You have the early adopters. You have the early, that's what I got? No, early innovators, early acceptors, early adopters, late adopters, and laggards,
There you
right?
go. Yeah. Right.
The class that you were talking about, or the group that you were talking about, are the laggards. Those are who will not readily or probably not at all take on to any of these things that people are saying them supposed to take on to. So let's put it in context now. Using the same example Patrick used, you have equal rights. You have people who will readily, we're gonna call him name, Aishana's team readily took on to the equal rights thing and it put it out to people. She's the innovator. They're the innovators, right? The early acceptors now are the persons who are ready to explore and their minds are diverse and stuff like that. So them latch on to the idea of equal rights, right? And they're the ones who start to disseminate it through the media and through, word of mouth and stuff like that. Then you have the early adopters, the people who are a little bit, reserved, and they're saying, okay, we want to see what other people think about it before we check it on, right? And so when they do know, they see it and they're seeing it as something that is accepted, they're taking it on as well. These are the early adopters. Now we're moving on to the late adopters now. And they're the ones who are mostly conservative, and they're going to say, all right, we're going to see how it goes, how people recept to it and all of that. And then after that, they're going to accept it later. Now you have the laggards. These are the most conservative people. And they're probably never going to accept, what equal rights is. Why am I saying all of this? I'm saying all of this to put it to what Patrick is saying about, you have to recognize that not everybody is going to be thinking down these lines, and there are different cultural aspects that will affect how media has an effect on our relationships and how we interact with each other. So yes, that's true, but at the same time, as a tool and as a structure, media is very influential, and sometimes it's not just as a tool. Sometimes it's because it's a structure. Sometimes it's become a part of our lives. It's such a big part of our lives that there probably isn't, most times, if not all, any sort of escape from how media affects you. Again, you have the laggards, and you have these group of people who will not be affected by media as much as the people coming from the earlier acceptors to the later adopters. But in the same sense, the structure is there, and we've accepted the structure because of these years and years and years of this thing evolving from just a tool to a structure.
And
Yeah.
I can agree with that wholeheartedly. And you're right, credit is due when you're talking about social media becoming a structure, because it really has become an integral part of our day-to-day lives. But even as a part of our lives, we should not still let it be controlling of our lives. And I think that is what I want us to get, because school is an institution. And I'm fairly certain you tech now really rule nobody life. CMU now really rule the life like so, right? I see Gio looking across like school a rule for your life right now. But the point is, it is a crucial part of your life, and it's influential, but it's still your life. While these things must can influence you, don't let these things become your gospel. You see me? Don't let the words of a Cardi B, don't let the words of a Vibes Cartel be what guides you through life. That's what I'm trying to get at. When I try to discredit social media and all them things, because once upon a time, very long ago, Adi was my daddy. All them things, and you couldn't talk to me too hard. You see me? But while we evolve as people, we must learn for I see that over there, so I want to take piece of this and add it to me. All right, I take a little piece of that and I add it to me. And it builds us as a whole, but we shouldn't let it rule and control us. But you're very right, it is no longer a tool, it really is a structure now. And it has some amazing power. Some amazing power.
Great, great. A very knowledge-filled discussion there, guys. I'm sure our viewers are learning a lot from you. The next question would be, do you think social media is bad for relationships? More specifically, um, as you said, people posting, and as we started to talk about influencers highlighting their beliefs. But not only that, but also just posting your relationship, letting it be open to other people and third parties. Do you think that's actually bad for relationships?
When you say post in your relationship, do you mean posting pictures of the person you are with, or do you mean posting your problems?
I believe that probably posting your problems would cause more of an issue, but at the same time publicizing who you're with based becomes a problem when, you know, other persons have an opinion about whoever you're with or your significant other, and you take it to heart. So you can tackle whichever you feel.
Okay. Um, Firstly, posting the person you are with. I don't believe that, because there's this thing that was going around on Instagram where they say just because my relationship is private doesn't mean that I won't post my person. It means I won't post my problems, right? Or issues. And that is something that I do agree with. I don't think it's a problem if you post the person that you are dealing with. First and foremost, it's really not anybody's business. And if you want to show them off, you show them off. That decision is purely up to you. You can do it, you can't do it. Should it affect you negatively though? I don't believe it should. And I think it all depends on the type of person you are. If you are easily influenced by other person's opinion, then it will. And I do recommend that you stay away from social media in that aspect. If it is where um you are not easily influenced, or you quite frankly don't really care what other persons have to say about the person, right? Then I don't believe it should be a problem. However, I do not believe that you should be posting your problems on social media. It should be private. Any issues you guys have, if you guys have a miscommunication, you guys fight, y'all make up, anything you do should be private. I mean, do you go out and post your family information on social media? Do you go out and say, yo, me and my mother did just have a fight? Do you post that on WhatsApp? Do you post it on Instagram? No, you don't, because you don't necessarily think that people need to know, and you don't have a problem. Not don't have a problem, but you don't want to tell people those type of information. You know, you keep your life private in that aspects, because it people can have negative comments towards it. And again, it goes back to if you are the type of person to be easily swayed, or you have a strong resolve. Because if you post one thing on social media and persons is like, you know, but I think you should have done with him or her, them a whatever, whatever, you know, you're going to overthink it, in my opinion, and agree with them. So that's what I think.
Okay, thank you so much. Before we move on, unfortunately, Patrick Watson and Kareem Medley had to leave us, but thank you for your time, and we'll just continue. Giovanni's hand was up first, then we'll move on to Margot. Yes.
Okay. So I might slightly disagree with Lori, slightly because we need to consider that the individuality of persons is something that is good to have in a relationship, and expressing yourself is a part of your individuality. Um, and not all times your expression needs to be conveyed to your partner when it is that you're not feeling let me say the word comfortable in the arrangement. No, don't run me down yet. This is what I mean. This is what I mean. Sometimes you need to feel out your emotions before you try to canvas them to your partner, because more times often than not we don't know what we're feeling before we talk, and that rawness can be good and can be bad, and most cases it's bad, because we need to understand how we feel so that we can effectively communicate. And miscommunication is a very bad thing. Let's just say that. Especially in intimate relationships, miscommunication is a terrible thing. So the subliminality of posting on social media acts as a escape for persons in relationships. Now, it's sometimes a bad thing because of what they choose to post, but at the same time, Margot spoke about the interpersonal aspect of relationships, and you have to look out for yourself some way or another and not all advice will be 100% good advice. And I will say this set of advice is not 100% good advice, but at the same time, we have to look out for ourselves some way, somehow. And that expression on the status, on this IG story, via social media is one way that people do that. And we all do it. We don't even realize that we do it sometimes, and we do it. You see one quote well you kind of relate to, you post. It have something to do with your relationship, you post. Right? You see one video what kind of talk about what y'all go through, your post. Right? And yeah, so that's basically it. But another thing that I want to talk about is how, and I said it earlier, is the reality, the fickleness of reality, right? So social media kind of tells us how a relationship is supposed to go, right? Different media influencers, different social media personalities will tell us how a relationship is supposed to go, or they will put to us what a relationship is, whether through their relationships or what they've experienced before. And that is what we try to emulate or try to copy or mimic. And that is another reason why relationships in this day and age are failing so terribly, because people want to be a Quiet Perry with his partner, or they want to be what I'm calling people like JKL for life, or whatever the hell the YouTube people name. I don't know. I don't care. But yeah, they want to be those people because they see this proportion of a perfect relationship, or this this display of what is supposed to be a good functioning relationship. And then in the same sense, them try to like emulate this, and it's not a good thing, to be honest. First of all, because of um the removal of the individuality of yourself and sometimes your partner, because you're saying, yo, that guy from YouTube did this for his girlfriend, what are you doing for me, right? And you're expecting these things, and they're not particularly realistic in your space, in your reality. So that's another way how social media can affect you negatively. But yeah.
Before Miss Margot goes, before Margot goes, you had said something as it relates to it was about the relationship aspect. Oh yeah, posting on social media. And I have a question. Do you think it is better to post on a status or an Instagram story rather than to privately text message persons and tell them about the situation? Because one, granted, most times that when you post on your Instagram story or your WhatsApp or Twitter, your viewers are not filtered. So everybody has to business. And after the fact that it's not filtered, everybody is seeing, everybody is going to have a comment, as opposed to you going to a trusted person to say to them, hey, I want to happen, I feel so, but discussion about what is going on. Would it not be better to do that than to post on social media?
Ideally it is. And remember I said while I was explaining that this is not 100% sort of okay advice, but I have to give merit to what it is, because again, the expression is what I'm basing it on, right? So when you confide in somebody, right, trusted or not, when you confide in somebody, it's kind of the same principle of posting, right? You're giving the information to people. The amount of people changes rather, and the intention of the persons change, right? But at the same, it's the basis. It's the basis of giving or expressing rather yourselves. So ideally, that is the way to go, and that is the advice that I would give anybody. But at the same time, we must look at the merit that is there. The fact that you expressing yourself is the basis of you posting on social media. And so it doesn't inherently mean that social media is the problem. It's how you choose to express yourself.
Okay.
I hope that explains it.
Marco, you can go.
All right. In terms of that question about how, social media affects, one of the things I'm thinking of is that how sacred do we um, find our relationship? Is it something that it's everybody's business? And meaning, if it is that you are going to be putting the relationship out there, as some of you have said before, um, you're giving persons access to it. And what is private cannot be attacked by, everybody out there. So once it is that you are going to be posting, one of the things, something that happened last week, I think, or the week before with Kirk Franklin, for example, gospel artist whose son, they were in some kind of telephone confrontation. And he posted that. He recorded it and he posted it. And then what you find is that what I expected based on that is for persons now to be start canceling Kirk Franklin, talk about how he is as, a father and all of those things. But that didn't happen. You had persons who were saying, look here, you put something out there and you're going to put just a part of it. And the persons are realizing that, no, you're not right. Or the reasons why you put it out there was, to kind of create this mayhem and for persons to see him as, less than he really is. And we have to be careful because sometimes if this is our only place of expression, every single thing that happens in our life or relationship, we're going to post it. And then it is when persons, for example, see you and that person. So you put it out there, this man is a dog, this man is whatever, this man, whatever it is that you post. And then you make up and persons see you start posting pictures with him. What are they going to be thinking of you? Because if it is that you have allowed everybody to see him in this negative light, and you are now seen again with him on social media, all in love and all of that again. Somebody say, yeah, man. Then persons are going to be like, no, what do I think of you? You are idiot. Because if this person did all of these things to you and you are now, posting up with him, then what do I think of you? The other thing I was wondering is how is it that you allowed social media to define your relationship? I know for some persons, if it's Instagram official, it's Facebook official, it is this official, it's social media official. If it is not out there for everybody to see on social media, then the relationship is not official. And the truth be told, there are persons who do have a problem with that. If you can't post me, that means you don't love me, or we're not in the right kind of relationship. Somebody spoke of it being an escape. If this is your only way of escaping or getting advice or seeking guidance, then, something is really wrong. That's how I see it. We don't need to live our lives in the public, because if it is that it's attacked, it is going to be detrimental to even our mental health.
Okay. Thank you, Margot. I am back. Unfortunately, we're going to have to cut the question short. But Keon, you can go ahead and comment on this question and we'll wrap up after you.
Okay, so back to her saying that some of the significant others have a problem if you don't post them and such and such. I have a comment on that. Usually, if you started the relationship or if you're in the middle of the relationship, some people don't know who you're with, or some people have an idea that you're talking to this person or you're dating this person, but you just didn't put it out in the public. If you go and post that person while everything is going good and such, it's not all the time, but it's a sometimes situation, and someone or knows that person, they will tell you something that you did not know. You're not always supposed to believe what the person tells you, but if this is a trusted person in this situation, or in some cases where that they won't lie to you like that, they said, oh, he has this and this someone, or she has this and this someone, but you don't know if it's actually, it's a definite thing, but you saw them together, or you saw them doing things. It can cause problems in relationship, in my opinion. Like, if you confront them about the situation, or say, I heard so and so, so and so, it will cause problems. It's not even say it can, it will. It will cause problems between you and the person, if you think about it, because you're saying, oh, you trusted this person, you thought they would tell you everything, and if they were talking to someone behind your back, you expected them to say it to you, but they didn't. It can change your perspective of the person, because you're saying they probably lied to you about that. What else did they lie to you about? I'm finished right there.
All right. Thank you, Keon. And also thank you to all our speakers. Unfortunately, we were not able to show the film in our event. However, it will be premiering very soon on our YouTube. Keon, thank you for being our brave participant. You've actually won a lifeline necklace and earring set. And we're also going to have a couple more giveaways of credit on our Instagram account. Thank you everyone for coming out. And thank you again, speakers. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the evening.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Here, actually.
I hope you guys can hear me. Thank you for having me.
We heard you.
Okay, great.
Okay, we've had a question. What time are we going to be premiering the film? We were trying for 5 o'clock. However, again, due to unforeseen circumstances, it will have to be pushed back again to later in the evening. And just look out for it. It will be there by tonight, the latest, and you will be able to watch and enjoy with us. So yes, thank you again, and we'll be signing out.